Welcome to today's math lesson. We are going to be learning about line graphs. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to create a line graph from a data table, label all of its parts correctly, and interpret a graph to draw conclusions. So, what exactly is a line graph? A line graph is a type of graph that uses points connected by lines to show how data changes over time. We use line graphs when we want to track how something is changing. For example, we might use a line graph to track temperature over days or months, to watch how a plant grows over several weeks, to follow sports scores across a season, or to compare any data that changes over time. The most important thing to remember is this: the x-axis always shows time, and the y-axis always shows the measurement. Every line graph has specific parts that must be included. The title tells the reader what the graph is about. The y-axis runs vertically and shows the values being measured. The x-axis runs horizontally and shows time or categories. And the data points are the plotted dots that represent each individual value. All four of these parts are required on every line graph you create. Now let's look at how to actually build a line graph, step by step. Step 1 is to read your data table carefully so you understand what information you are working with. Step 2 is to draw and label your axes. The x-axis will show your time variable, and the y-axis will show your measured value. Step 3 is to choose a scale. Pick numbers that are evenly spaced and cover all of your data values. Step 4 is to plot each data point. Find the correct position on the x-axis, move straight up to the correct value on the y-axis, and place a dot. Step 5 is to connect the dots by drawing a line through every point in order from left to right. And Step 6 is to add your title, so the reader knows what the graph is showing. Here is a completed example. This graph shows the growth of a bean plant over 6 weeks. Notice that the title is clearly written at the top. The x-axis is labeled with each week, and the y-axis is labeled with the height in centimeters. The scale goes from 0 to 30 in even intervals. Every data point is plotted and connected with a line. Use this checklist every time you finish a graph. Does it have a title? Is the x-axis labeled? Is the y-axis labeled? Is the scale evenly spaced? Are all points plotted? Are the points connected? If you can check all 6, your graph is complete. Remember, missing labels means an incomplete graph. When we interpret a line graph, one of the first things we look for is the trend. There are 3 types of trends. An increasing trend means the line goes up, which tells us the data is growing over time. A decreasing trend means the line goes down, which tells us the data is falling over time. A flat trend means the line stays roughly level, which tells us the data is staying about the same. A trend is the general direction the data moves. You should always describe the trend when interpreting a graph. Now let's practice drawing conclusions from a real graph. This graph shows the number of hours per week a student spent playing video games throughout the school year. Looking at the graph, we can see that December had the highest number of hours at 12, which lines up with the holiday break. February and March were tied for the lowest at 5 hours per week. From September through March, the overall trend is generally decreasing, meaning the student played less as the school year got busier. Based on all of this, we can draw the following conclusion. Students tend to play more video games when school is not in session. Line graphs can also show more than one set of data at the same time. This graph compares the test scores of 2 classes across 5 tests throughout the semester. Class A is shown in teal, and Class B is shown in coral. When you use more than one line, you must always include a legend so the reader knows which line represents which data set. Looking at the graph, we can see that Class A started lower, but improved steadily over time. Class B started strong, but gradually declined. By Test 5, Class A was outperforming Class B. The 2 lines crossed somewhere between Test 2 and Test 3. Always include a legend when using multiple lines. Before we move on, let's go over some common mistakes to avoid. First, do not use an uneven scale on your y-axis. Always use equal intervals, such as 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. Second, do not connect your points out of order. Always connect them from left to right. Third, never leave out your title, axis labels, or units. Every graph must have all of these. Fourth, do not start your y-axis at a random number. You should generally begin at 0 unless the data specifically requires otherwise. And fifth, do not use a line graph for data that does not change over time. For example, favorite colors should be shown in a bar graph. Line graphs are for data that changes over time. Here are 8 key vocabulary words for this lesson. A line graph is a graph that uses connected points to show change over time. The x-axis is the horizontal axis that usually shows time or categories. The y-axis is the vertical axis that shows the values or quantities being measured. The scale is the evenly spaced number system on an axis. A data point is a plotted dot showing one piece of information on the graph. A trend is the general direction the data moves, whether increasing, decreasing, or flat. A conclusion is a statement about what the data tells us, backed by evidence from the graph. And a legend is a key that explains what each line or color on the graph represents. Let's wrap up what we learned today. A line graph shows how data changes over time using connected points. Every graph needs a title, labeled x and y axes, and an evenly spaced scale. We can identify trends as increasing, decreasing, or flat, and we draw conclusions by analyzing the highest point, the lowest point, and the overall trend. Here is your exit ticket.
In 1 to 2 sentences, describe the trend shown in the bean plant growth graph from today's lesson, and explain what that trend tells us about how the plant grew.